Chapter 8 describes the society of the High Middle Ages, the rise of merchants in towns, the growth of universities, and the intellectual life of the High Middle Ages. Four basic social groups were distinguished in the Middle Ages: the nobility, the clergy, the peasantry, and merchants. Noblemen lived off of the labor of others. War was their sole occupation, and in peacetime they liked hunting and tournaments. Set codes of social conduct developed in noble circles. Noblemen formed a broad social spectrum, from minor vassals to mighty barons. After the 14th century, several factors such as population losses, changes in military tactics, and the alliance of wealthy towns with the king forced the landed nobility into a steep economic and political decline. There were two basic types of clergy: the regular, made up of the monks and nuns who lived in the cloisters, and the secular, those who worked directly among the regular people, who formed a vast hierarchy. New religious orders were created as a result of Gregorian reform. The clergy, which formed a large percentage of the population, lived on the labor of others. Due to popular reverence for its role as mediator between God and man, the clergy obtained special immunities that townsmen came to resent. After the 15th century, government subjected them to the basic responsibilities of citizenship. The largest and lowest social group was the agrarian peasantry. There were both servile and free manors. Two basic changes occurred in the evolution of the manor. One, as the lords parceled out their land to new tenants, manors became hopelessly fragmented, and family farms replaced manorial units. Second, the revival of trade in towns made possible the translation of feudal dues into money payments, giving tenants greater freedom. When a declining nobility tried to increase taxes and restrict migration into the city, armed revolts broke out. Although brutally crushed, they stood as a testimony to the breakup of medieval society. By modern comparison, most medieval towns were but small villages dominated by feudal lords. Increasingly, as towns grew, merchants gained influence and grew to be powerful political forces. These men were suspect within traditional medieval society and advocated a strong central government that would eliminate arbitrary tolls and tariffs that hampered trade. The resulting conflict with the landed nobility led towns to form independent communes and ally with kings. Merchant guilds appeared in the 11th century and craft guilds in the 12th. The text briefly considers the shifting relations among towns, nobility, and monarchy. In addition, the chapter notes the church's campaigns against heretics, Jews, and infidels. A renaissance of ancient knowledge in the 12th century, thanks mostly to Spanish Muslim scholars, contributed to the rise of universities. At first, a university was no more than a group of individuals united by common self-interest and for mutual protection. The university was simply a program of study that gave the student license to teach others. Before the emergence of universities, the liberal arts had been taught in cathedral and monastery schools. The most important universities specialized in particular disciplines, such as law or theology, and were located in Paris, Oxford, Cambridge, and Heidelberg. The textual finds of the 12th century included all of Aristotle's logic, as well as Ptolemy and Euclid and many Latin classics. The Summa, a summary of all that was known about a topic, was an especially important contribution of the time. Logic and dialect, however, soon became more important than the other arts and formed the basis of scholastic study. Some scholars, notably John of Salisbury, rejected scholasticism as heartless and presumptuous. They believed that grammar and eloquence were much more useful for the church. Scholastic thinkers quarreled over the proper relation of theology and philosophy and whether or not universal concepts existed apart from the human mind. Aristotelian logic especially seemed to some critics a moral threat to biblical and traditional study. The story of Peter Abelard and his people lover is recounted. He stands as both a renowned scholar and disgraced revolutionary thinker. This chapter also includes a section on medieval women and children. The authors emphasize that the image of women as either subjugated housewives or confined nuns is misleading. Actually, the majority of medieval women were neither. On the one hand, women were dominated by males in almost every aspect of life and were expected to be obedient to husbands whose duty it was to protect and discipline them. On the other hand, women were protected in Germanic law and defended by the church as spiritual equals to males. The vast majority of women were respected and loved by their husbands, perhaps because they worked so closely with them in various occupations. Women played a prominent and creative role in workday medieval society. Although some historians maintain that medieval children were not valued and were even neglected, there is sufficient evidence to suggest that medieval parents loved their children as much as modern ones do.